Hello and welcome back everyone, Joe here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made this dress form start to finish, everything. So it's kind of a lot, but I'm here to help you guys. I'm going to walk you through it, that way so if you decide to do this, you know what you're getting yourself into. Let's jump in. So most materials will be down in the description and I'll have everything set up for you guys to go back and reference whenever you need. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the tape method, which I have done before for my pattern making series. However, this is a little updated. I did cut the tape strips a little thinner this time just to help with the structure of the tape cast, and I did make them like horizontal and vertical, like interwoven, almost kind of resemble the structure of a woven fabric, so it could kind of reinforce the entire structure, so when I go to cut it, it doesn't kind of like wobble out of form. And it kind of did work, it really did. Another things to remember, do not forget to mark your stand hole. And yeah, the length is very subjective. It's up to you, whatever you'd like, whatever you feel comfortable with. I went up to the knee, but ended up kind of trimming it off a little bit. So do not worry about the length. It's all up to you. So I do recommend you really take your time during this part of the process. It's honestly the part that took me the longest, and I did have to cut out a lot of footage due to how long it took. So do keep that in mind. And a few tips: do not forget to mark your stand, and just be cautious with the armholes. Don't cover them, and save that little piece of saran wrap that is the perfect measurement of the armhole, so you can go ahead and use that and make a pattern piece later. I totally recommend it. Once I finished taping, I went ahead and started marking everything. Started with the center front and the center back, which was a little tricky with a ruler, so I kind of had to get creative, and this is what I did. Okay, so not a huge invention, but I ended up taping a string down the middle carefully of the tape cast, and it really helped me get a straight line across all the curves and all the forms of the body, and I highly recommend it. I did the same to the back, and it was a great outcome. Just make sure you don't go over the butt like I did a little too much, or you'll end up with a super big bottom. And yeah, but it's fine. I'm happy with how it turned out, so no problems here. Now I kind of got creative with the string again for the hem and kind of tied it tightly around the knees, and it made like this straight line all across, so it really helped me with the curves and everything. So here's another little tip that I kind of recommend. I really do. A few other markings that appeared off cam because I lost the footage, cannot find it, are the princess seams. Just find the midpoint of the shoulder, work your way down to the midpoint of the half of the center back, and then do the same to the front. Alright, so now that I had all the markings ready, I started cutting. Do not forget to be very careful with this part. I halfway through, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought using an X-Acto knife would be okay, and then I was like, no, there's too much risk here, so I scrapped that idea completely. So I continued with the embroidery scissors. So there you go. So if you're wondering why I'm setting aside or why the other piece and why it doesn't have any markings, it's because I recommend you work in halves, and it's what I did. I only need one set of the half, and the other part is just cut in two. You cut two, and you mirror the other piece for your fabric, and you're all set. If I was to add the same markings to the other half, cut them out and just consider it like one whole set, like, you know, two center fronts and two backs of everything, the pattern pieces probably wouldn't be symmetrical or mirrored nicely. So that is why I am just gonna keep this, store it somewhere, because I do not want to throw it away. It looks too cool. You could even use it as a mold, I guess. I don't know about silicone and stuff like that, but who knows. So that aside, once I have all my separate pattern pieces, I started adding little cuts into the fullest parts, or the most three-dimensional pieces or parts of the pieces, and that essentially made little darts, which are these little cuts you can see that are like little wedges into the pieces, and that essentially helps us open the pattern up and help it lay flat, which then allows us to trace them. Once I finished tracing all the pattern pieces, I went ahead and added all of the seam allowances, but before you do that, make sure you match them up. Every single seam that's going to go together, like that matches up, make sure they're the same length. Use a measuring tape and take it slowly, and just be patient. You're bound to have to edit a little bit, and just come to terms with that, and you'll get through it. You got this. But besides that, yeah, I used about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Center front's on fold, and the center back has the same thing. For the hem, I did make it 1/2 inch. I wanted extra room just in case anything went wrong or I wanted to extend it. But yeah, so that's about it. And like I said, do not forget to match your pattern pieces to each other before you go to this step, which is cutting your fabric after tracing it. Now for this part, I forgot that I needed to interface, so I just went ahead and I basted them onto another layer of fabric, then just kind of like cut them out again. So that's what I did. You could also interface and do that as well for an even sturdier dress form, but it's totally up to you. First step in sewing would actually be doing all the darts in every single pattern piece, and once you do that, you're all set to start sewing them together. Now I sewed them waist up as one piece and then the waist down as another piece, just to facilitate the sewing process instead of sewing center front like lengthwise. It would just complicate things with the curves and everything. So I did it this way, matched everything, made sure everything was fine, did a few little sewing bits here and there, little edits, and after that I was all set to join these pieces. But before that, I remembered that I needed to mark the stand hole, and I just did a few quick running stitches, and yeah, that's all you have to do. And you're all set, and you need to start joining these two pieces to create one whole piece. And by doing that, I turned the top part inside out, well, right sides out, I guess, and then put it into the bottom part. But do not forget to match up the center front and the center back, or you'll sew it backwards and it'll be a whole mess. Alright, and then I went ahead and sewed the waist, and I'm ready to move on to the next part, which is the structure of the dress form, the stand and the base and everything, and how it's gonna hold up. So yeah, let's move on. And honestly, this part's like the most complicated part for me because I don't know anything about woodworking, and I used dowels, a candle holder, and these little topper things. All the names and measurements will be in the description. So yeah, so let's jump in. So at this point, I had forgotten that I needed to draft the pattern for the closure at the bottom and the armhole closures, and that's where the little saran wrap piece of the armhole came in handy to draft all of that. And then I went ahead and closed the top opening at the neck, just did some quick little running stitches, ran it through, then pulled it tight, and then secured it with a few little stitches to keep it in place. Alright, so with the top secured and everything, we're all set to start the first stuffing. I recommend you start off by slowly stuffing the neck. You need to have enough room for the dowel to go in, but also need to have some stuffing all around that part, and it's kind of tricky, especially with the type of stuffing that I used. So just keep that in mind if you're going to do this, and don't forget to do that. You could also stuff through the armholes if you haven't sealed it off before stuffing, which is what I did, and I kind of recommend it. It did facilitate stuffing the shoulders, but I did end up overstuffing and jamming the dowel down like to push the stuffing, really stretched out the fabric and didn't help with the bigger measurement I already had and really stretched it out. So that's one of the other reasons why I had a really big dress form, but just keep that in mind. And turns out that the pattern I made was a little too big, so I went ahead and traced another one and made it to fit a little better. Then I cut out the pattern pieces and the fabric and everything, basted them just like the other pattern pieces. I also did a facing for the bottom one. You cut it out, sew all around, and then run it through the back, and you have a perfect opening. So the most important part is just making sure that the dowel fits, and even if it's a little loose, it's fine. Use a closer take of the facing and the whole bottom piece. The circle is the red markings are the new piece, and I'm just gonna cut it out and trace it. I didn't want to waste more material. So that's how it looks. And all of these will be sewn using a hidden stitch. So even the armhole ones and everything. Now we're moving on to the armholes, I believe. Now I'm going to show you the little plastics I cut out. You can use these from any plastic, from any wrapping or packaging from any product that is just flat and works. Just cut it out to the measurement and then sew all around with the running stitch. And as you're sewing around the circle, you tighten it a bit and then it just goes all around. It's like when you cover a button with some fabric to have it match a coat or something when the button's off and you only have those. It's a good technique, and I use this to give the armhole structure so over time it doesn't stretch out or anything, and the sturdiness of it helps you be able to trace when you're draping. So now that everything's stuffed and I like how the dress form is looking, I'm going to start working on the dowel and making sure I try to extend it since it was a little short. So I drilled holes and then added a little toothpick in there with some glue, wood glue, put it together, and I bought these bases and glued this candle stand holder onto there. Great, but when I was trying to put it into the dress form, it broke. And this was like my third prototype of trying to join these dowels together. I was over it, so I ended up just stitching it on how it was and just using that original dowel length. It wasn't too short, but I was looking for a higher stand just in case I ever wanted to do something long and dramatic or something, but I guess it's fine. I could just put it on an elevated chair or something, I don't know, like a little doll chair. It's fine. So I just went ahead, did the little hidden stitch, sealed it all up. Done. This is how it looked. This is the stand. It's all sealed. Put it in. It's a very snug fit, so it holds very well. I could lift it, it won't fall out, and I don't have to glue it. So if I want to remove it or clean it, it's a possibility, and that's something I love about this. Same thing with the topper. I tried to add glue and other stuff, but it just didn't stick. It was fine. I didn't mind after a while. I did have to go ahead and drill out a little bit into the opening to make sure that the fabric would fit on the topper, but everything ended up working out. I did also trim a little bit to help, and eventually it stayed and it was great, and I'm super happy with the structure and the way it looks. All the wood is bought from different places, and somehow it's decently cohesive, and I don't know how the stars aligned for me like that, but I'm super proud because it looks great. And I hate to toot my own horn, but I'm very proud of it. And this is me using this drill that I bought just for this project to drill it out, and it did come in handy, but in the end I ended up not really needing it as much as I thought I would. I could have just carved it on my own with an X-Acto knife, as dangerous as it sounded. I did it before, my first one before I got the tool, and it worked out fine. So, there it is. And I'm just here to make the mistakes so you guys don't have to, and just to give you guys the tips. It took me a bit to get all the fabric in there, but once I got it in there, it stayed and it worked out. So at this point, I'm just steaming all of it to get rid of the heat erasable pen and make sure it's all white and clean and looking nice. I did also take it out before I finished and give it a nice little wash and some bleach to get rid of any dust or dirt that I had on my hands, and that did really help make it look a lot cleaner since I did handle it a lot during the sewing process. And this is how it looks. I am honestly really happy with the outcome. It's a little bigger than I thought it would be, but it's honestly fine. The added ease is already in there. Alright, so let's go ahead and test this little baby out. So I went ahead and draped some knit fabric, and I'm just going to do a quick little dress. It's like a slip-on knit dress. The stretch will help it slip on over the thighs. Nothing too crazy, nothing too complicated. You drape the front and then the back. The back's going to be cut too, while the front's going to be cut on fold, and I'm going to go ahead and remove any X's and match up the hem, make sure it's all good. We have two pieces. The center front will be cut on fold on another piece of the knit fabric, and then we're going to cut the two separate pieces again right here. So just make sure everything's mirrored and everything looks nice, especially when you're tracing over it. Remember to flip it over so you get the right side so you don't cut two of the same pieces. And there it is. This is how it looks. It's just a quick little dress. The measurement is a little big, especially since the ease is already added on, so I do recommend you take about ½ inch off down the center front of the front piece, or just calculate that when you make your pattern after you take your draping off. And I ended up adding this kind of like ruffled look by stretching the fabric as I overlock it, and it looks all gathered and kind of like lace-like, and this is how it looks. I wasn't satisfied with it and I felt like it was too simple, but looking back at it, I kind of like it. But I ended up adding that same detail at the neckline, and I like that even less, and I wasn't very happy with it, so I just ended up trimming it off and making it into a cute little skirt. And it doesn't matter really how this turned out, because it was just a quick example for you guys to see how the fabric and would function on the dress form, how it's applied. And I will have more videos in the future draping stuff on there, and maybe even an updated dress form. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching the entire video. For those of you who did, I really appreciate it. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't, if you want to see more of this content, and leave a comment. Let me know what you liked, what you would change, any advice for a noob at using wood and stuff. I would really appreciate that. So thank you guys. Don't forget to share this with a friend, and yeah, see you guys next time. Take care.